Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SDG Media Zone, hosted by EarthX TV. My name is Kate Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the Global Island Partnership. It really is my privilege to join you here as the moderator for this incredibly important and timely conversation. As world leaders convene in person and remotely for the 76th United Nations General Assembly, it's critical that meaningful momentum is generated in the lead up to COP26 in Glasgow. That's why today we'll be highlighting the Science Not Silence campaign, an important movement that gives meaning to the phrase, unite behind the science. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guests. Firstly, His Excellency Feturi Elisaia, who currently serves as the independent state of Samoa's first resident High Commissioner to Fiji. Before that, and where I know him very well from, he served as Samoa's permanent representative to the United Nations for over a decade. It is an honor for us to have him here today. We also have Ms. Heeta Lakhani, who serves as the Global South focal point for YOUNGO, the official youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which hosts the annual COP. As the representative for young climate leaders throughout the Global South, Heeta has a literal seat at the table for the upcoming international climate change negotiations that will take place in Glasgow. And finally, Matt Tranchin serves as the president of March for Science, the world's largest grassroots science advocacy organization, which launched on Earth Day in 2017 with public demonstrations in more than 600 cities around the world. He also serves as the president of the Island Resilience Partnership, which structures public-private partnerships with island governments to accelerate their transition to renewable energy and resilient infrastructure. Talofa Ambassador Feturi, or High Commissioner Feturi, you and the independent state of Samoa launched the Science Not Silence campaign at the conclusion of COP25 in Madrid, after the IPCC 1.5 special report had once again been blocked from being formally welcomed. Why is it important for Samoa to take such a public stand in support of this report?
Well, one, it's out of frustration and a sense of letdown. All the years we've been saying that there is such a thing as climate change, but then our partners keep on reminding us, give us the science. And now when this scientific report finally came out at the request of small island developing states, the international community wouldn't even welcome it. So it's a big letdown for us. That's why we thought that we will join with the Science Not Silence campaign. Why? Because science is non-political, it's neutral, and it's also applicable worldwide. And it's not wedded to a particular political or economic ideology. So we felt safe in that respect because science knows no borders and it's accepted wherever it is applied.
Thank you so much, High Commissioner Feturi. I will ask my next question to Heeta. So last year on International Youth Day, YOUNGO joined the Science Not Silence campaign as an official co-organizer with AOSIS, or the Alliance of Small Island States. Since then, the movement begun by Samoa, and thank you very much to Samoa for that leadership, has now been joined by 21 nations across the globe. Why was it important for you and YOUNGO to amplify this campaign?
Thank you, Kate, for that question. I would like to go back to a personal experience that I had at the UNFCCC negotiations a couple of years ago, right after the IPCC report came out in 2018. And we were in the room as youth, watching the negotiations go on, and saw how countries were discrediting the science, did not want to welcome it, kept pushing it back, just because they could, invest a little bit more, spend a little bit more, make a little bit more money. And we saw geopolitical issues changing right in front of our eyes from a day-to-day negotiation basis. We saw countries supporting each other. We saw how alliances were formed, how the negotiations got more and more heated, even 6 months later as we went into the intersessions or the smaller negotiations between the two COPs. The same issues persisted and still continues to persist. And I think this is one of the main touching points for us. We had an ad hoc working group in YOUNGO focusing on the IPCC special report that came out. And as we saw this, we said, this is something that we really, really, really need to focus on, because 1.5 and 2 is a matter of life and death for millions of young people from across the world. And I think this is one of the main reasons why we stuck to it, and we continue wholeheartedly supporting the campaign, championing it in our power as much as we can.
And thank you so much for that, Heeta, and for your work in YOUNGO on this campaign. Matt, over to you. The recent IPCC reports have only further demonstrated the urgency with which the climate crisis needs to be addressed. And more, I think it becomes more and more clear every day. Why is it important for the IPCC 1.5 degree special report to be formally welcomed? Is it merely symbolic?
You know, it certainly is incredibly symbolic and has a tremendous importance with that symbolism within the climate movement. You know, I think when you look at how the world is defining success with regard to the climate movement, we have the nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs, that every country is putting forth under the Paris Agreement to make the difference required to avert the worst effects of the climate crisis. And what we know is that a majority of countries have inadequate goals to keep global warming below 1.5 degree threshold, let alone 2 degrees. And most of those countries aren't even on target to achieving those goals. By getting governments to publicly stand united in support of a report that, again, has been blocked from being formally welcomed at the last 2 COPs, both in Poland and in Madrid, it, I think, redefines success for the climate movement.
Thank you, Matt. High Commissioner Feturi, building on that, very much from the beginning of the climate movement, islands have really played an important role of leading the way. From 1.5 to stay alive, and we remember that very strongly, and the Samoa pathway, small island developing states have mobilized world leaders and the public around urgent action. At the heart of that has really been this idea of partnerships and action on partnerships. How have genuine, durable partnerships guided your approach to achieving meaningful progress?
When this opportunity opened up in Madrid, we were happy to join with Science Not Silence because it introduced a new partnership for us, which are predominantly youth. And while the youth may not be in the negotiating room, I think their membership is worldwide. Their voice is deafening and powerful, and their advocacy untainted by any political leanings. And their message reaches the 4 corners of the globe. So importantly, they have a right to be heard because they are already leaders now, not tomorrow. And they are leaders in their own right, and they are helping to shape the future world that they want to inherit from us. So partnerships is really important.
Thank you, High Commissioner, and it was very much a pleasure to be at that meeting where partnerships were discussed in 2014. And I'm going to ask Heeta the next question, which really builds on what High Commissioner Feturi's answer. But as we head into COP26 in Glasgow, how is YOUNGO and yourself defining success? What would success look like?
Yeah, I think there is multiple sides to this answer. One is in the terms of the negotiations. When we look at how countries have been engaging in the past years, as youth, I think we're really, really hopeful that the pandemic, the break from negotiations, and really the sit back and think time that we've got for a while really pushes countries to do a little bit more, to really take things into action. We've been saying it's time for action for a few years now, but it is really, really urgent that we make this action happen. So just trying to complete the incomplete Paris rulebook that we've been working with since 2018 would be one of the biggest goals that we're trying to work. The other is also, of course, with the Science Not Silence campaign, but also beyond just the campaign, just to see that science in itself, because the health crisis also was only combated because we had science and because we had people listening, and because together we could work together as a global community. And the climate crisis is no doubt different than the pandemic that we've faced. So really working together, listening to the science, with the new IPCC report that came out just recently a few months ago, I think it's really, really evident that we really don't have any more time to lose. Looking at the role of the vulnerable communities, whether it's Indigenous peoples, whether it's women, whether it's youth, looking at civil society as a whole and ensuring that we can have parts of the solution, we can help you achieve the consensus that you're needing. And take us in full faith, in good faith, and assuming that we're not here just to stall process, just to call you out. Yes, we're here to call you out because we want to hold you accountable. We want to hold you to do better.
Thank you so much, Heeta, and good luck to those of you who are going to Glasgow. We really hope that there are great outcomes there. Matt, over to you. In the recent IPCC reports, they really established that many countries have inadequate climate goals or nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. And most countries are not on track to achieving those goals. What gives you hope in spite of all of this?
Yeah, I think when we talk about the climate crisis, there are two sides of that coin, climate action and climate solutions. On the climate action side, people like Heeta give me hope. Young people give me hope. I mean, what the youth have done for the climate movement in the last few years alone has, I think, transformed the conversations that are not only happening, over dinner tables, but it's completely changed the way the press and the media are framing this. And I think that we're just beginning to see the power and influence on young people changing this conversation, and I think actually putting the kinds of pressure on politicians and elected governments to change their ways. So that gives me hope on the climate action front. I think when the Paris Agreement came into effect, the marketplace wasn't quite at a point where these massive national energy transitions could take place while delivering the kind of economic benefit on top of the environmental benefit. But we're seeing that now. We're seeing countries like Samoa transition from 48% renewable energy to nearly 100% while cutting their energy rates in half. And that partnership is informing other partnerships around the world.
Thank you, Matt. That's very inspirational. Some great places for hope. And with that, this session of the SDG Media Zone at the UN General Assembly has come to an end. And I'd really like to thank all of our speakers, really wonderful insights.